It was in the summer of 2021 when I stopped at a yard sale in a quiet neighborhood just outside of Louisville, Kentucky. I had been driving aimlessly that Saturday morning, enjoying the warm breeze and looking for small, unique finds. The house hosting the sale was old, with peeling white paint and a sagging porch, but the tables out front were filled with antiques, worn-out books, rusted tools, and mismatched furniture that looked like it had been collecting dust for decades. I wandered through the clutter, my fingers brushing over old trinkets when I saw it. A tall antique mirror leaning against a wooden chair, its frame carved with intricate floral patterns, though the gold paint had faded over time. The glass had a slight distortion, the way really old mirrors do, but something about it held my attention. It was cheap, too cheap for something that looked that old. So I bought it without a second thought and loaded it into my trunk. That night, I set the mirror against the wall in my bedroom. It was heavy, too heavy to mount just yet, so I left it resting on the floor. As I got ready for bed, I caught my reflection from the corner of my eye. The glass had an odd way of warping the room behind me, stretching shadows in ways that didn't quite make sense. It made me uneasy, but I told myself it was just the age of the mirror messing with the reflection. I woke up at 3:12 a.m. My body was frozen, gripped by a sense of dread I couldn't explain. My room was dark except for the soft glow of my nightlight. I wasn't sure what had woken me, but my breath felt heavy, like the air itself was pressing against my chest. My eyes drifted toward the mirror. There was something wrong with the reflection. The room in the glass wasn't the same as the one around me. The shadows in the mirror stretched further, curling unnaturally toward the corners. My bed was there, my nightstand, my lamp, but the reflection wasn't quite right. Then I saw it. There was someone standing in the mirror. At first I thought it was just another trick of the warped glass, but as my eyes adjusted, the shape became clearer. A figure stood in the reflection's doorway, tall and motionless. My actual bedroom door was shut, but in the mirror it was open. The figure had no clear face, just a dark, hollow outline. My breath caught in my throat as it took a step forward. I threw my blanket over my head, squeezing my eyes shut, my body trembling. I lay there, heart hammering, until exhaustion pulled me back into a restless sleep. The next morning, I forced myself to look into the mirror again. The reflection was normal, no strange figures, no distortions beyond the usual warped glass. I convinced myself it had been a dream, a half-awake hallucination, but deep down, I knew something wasn't right. That night, I turned the mirror toward the wall before going to bed. I wasn't taking any chances. But at exactly 3:12 a.m. I woke up again. This time I heard it, a slow, dragging sound, like fingernails scraping against wood. My pulse pounded as I reached for my phone, using the dim glow to illuminate the room. The mirror was no longer facing the wall, it had turned back around. My breath hitched, my skin ice cold. I didn't remember moving it. I didn't hear anything that could have caused it to shift. But there it was, standing upright, angled perfectly toward my bed. The air in my room felt suffocating, thick with something unseen. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. By morning, I had made up my mind. The mirror had to go. I lugged it back to my car, not bothering to wrap it in a blanket, and drove back to where I'd bought it. The house was still there, the peeling paint, the sagging porch, but something was different. There was no yard sale, no tables, no signs of anyone ever having set up a sale in the first place. I knocked on the door. No answer. I knocked again, harder this time. After a few moments, an elderly woman finally opened it. I asked about the yard sale, about the mirror I had bought. She gave me a confused look before shaking her head. She said she hadn't had a yard sale in years. My mouth went dry. I turned back to my car, heart pounding. The mirror sat in the back seat, the glass catching the light in a way that almost made it look like something was moving inside it. I drove straight to a nearby dump, refusing to look in the rearview mirror the entire time. When I got there, I didn't hesitate. I lifted the mirror out of the car and threw it onto the pile of broken furniture and shattered glass. The moment it left my hands, I felt the air lighten around me like a weight had been lifted. That night, I slept better than I had in days. But just as I was drifting off, my phone buzzed on my nightstand, a new message from an unknown number. "Why did you leave me behind?" It was late fall of 2022, when I stopped at a small neighborhood yard sale in a quiet town outside of Asheville, North Carolina. The air was crisp, the sky overcast, and most of the houses had Halloween decorations still clinging to their porches, even though the holiday had passed. I wasn't planning on buying anything, just browsing out of curiosity, but something about one particular table caught my attention. An old wooden box sat among a clutter of antiques, its surface scratched and worn with age. It was small, about the size of a shoebox, with iron clasps holding it shut. The carvings along the edges looked intricate, swirling patterns that reminded me of something ancient, something forgotten. I picked it up, running my fingers over the surface. The woman running the sale, a frail-looking lady with tired eyes, barely glanced at me before muttering that the box was $1 if I wanted it. The way she said it, flat, almost relieved, should have been a warning. I handed her the money without another word, something in me drawn to it despite the unease creeping at the back of my mind. That night I placed the box on my desk and stared at it under the glow of my lamp. The carvings looked even more elaborate up close, strange symbols that didn't quite make sense. The clasps were rusted, but with a little force they snapped open. The lid creaked as I lifted it, the sound unnaturally loud in the quiet room. Inside there was only dirt. A fine layer of dust and soil coated the bottom, but as I sifted through it with my fingers, I found something buried beneath. A small bundle of fabric wrapped tightly with twine. My stomach twisted as I carefully unraveled it. Inside was a set of teeth, not plastic, not decorative. Real teeth. Human, yellowed with age, with the roots still attached. My breath hitched as I dropped the fabric, the tiny bones clattering against the wooden surface. A strange smell filled the room, something damp and rotting, even though there was nothing but dirt and dust inside the box. The air felt heavier, pressing against my skin. The moment I put the lid back on, the feeling eased, but the unease remained. That night I woke up gasping, my body ice cold. The room was silent, but the air felt different, charged. I reached for my phone to check the time. 3:12 a.m. That was when I heard it. A soft tapping sound coming from my desk. My stomach dropped. I didn't want to look, didn't want to confirm what I already knew. But my eyes moved on their own. The box was open. The clasps undone. I sat frozen, my breath shallow, the tapping continuing, slow, deliberate, from inside the box. My fingers trembled as I reached forward, hesitating just above the lid. The moment I touched it, the tapping stopped. The silence was worse. My entire body screamed at me to get rid of it, to throw it outside, but my limbs felt locked, unable to move. Somehow I managed to shove the lid shut and back away. I didn't sleep after that. The next morning I drove out to a secluded area by a creek, gripping the box tightly in my hands. I wasn't going to sell it, wasn't going to pass it off to someone else like that woman had done to me. I was going to bury it, leave it somewhere it couldn't be found. I dug a hole deep enough that it wouldn't be disturbed and dropped the box inside, shoving dirt over it until it was gone. I felt lighter as I walked back to my car, as if the weight had lifted. But the moment I got inside and shut the door, my phone buzzed, a new message from an unknown number. That won't work. My hands went numb as I stared at the screen, my heart hammering in my chest. No one had been out there. No one had seen me. The phone buzzed again, saying, "You shouldn't have opened it." I turned the phone off, throwing it onto the passenger seat, my breaths coming out shallow and uneven. I drove home in complete silence, refusing to look in the rear-view mirror, refusing to acknowledge the cold feeling creeping down my spine. That night I locked my bedroom door and kept the lights on, my body coiled with exhaustion but too afraid to sleep. When my phone finally died, I felt a strange sense of relief. No more messages, no more whispers from something unseen, but just as I was about to drift off, I heard it again. A soft, deliberate tapping from inside my closet. It was in the spring of 2023 when I came across a small yard sale in a quiet neighborhood outside of Boise, Idaho. I hadn't planned on stopping, but something about the setup caught my attention. The house was old, the kind that had probably been standing for over a century, its wooden siding worn down by time. The tables were filled with vintage trinkets, faded books, and furniture that looked like it had been sitting in an attic for decades. I wandered through, casually browsing, when I saw it. A doll. It sat alone on a chair near the back of the yard, propped upright like it was waiting for someone. It was old, really old. Its dress was once white, but had yellowed with age, and its porcelain face was lined with fine cracks, like veins just beneath the surface. The most unsettling part was the smile. It was too wide, its lips slightly parted, as if frozen in mid-sentence. The glass eyes, glossy and unblinking, seemed to follow me as I moved. I don't know why I bought it. I don't even like dolls, but something about it felt off. The woman running the sale barely reacted when I picked it up, barely glanced at me as I handed her a $5 bill. I asked if it had belonged to her, but she only muttered, "It just came with the house." That should have been my second warning, but I took the doll home anyway. That night I placed it on a shelf in my living room, telling myself it was just another antique, nothing more. But the moment I turned off the lights, the air in the room shifted. It was subtle at first, a feeling of heaviness, of something unseen settling into the walls. I shrugged it off, chalking it up to exhaustion, and went to bed. I woke up around 2 a.m., my throat dry, my body unnaturally still. The house was silent, but something felt wrong. I sat up slowly, my heart thudding in my chest, my ears straining to hear anything unusual. That's when I noticed my bedroom door was open. I always shut it before sleeping, always. My stomach tightened as I scanned the room, my pulse hammering in my ears. The doll was sitting in the corner, not on the shelf where I had left it, not in the living room, in my bedroom. My breath caught in my throat. I didn't move, didn't blink, my skin crawling as I stared at it. The dim light from the street outside cast shadows across its porcelain face, and for a brief second I could have sworn the smile was wider. I didn't touch it, I didn't acknowledge it. I got out of bed as slowly as I could, my legs shaking, and left the room without turning my back on it. I spent the rest of the night on the couch, every light in the house on. When the sun finally rose, I went back to my bedroom. The doll was still there, sitting in the exact same spot, but now its head was tilted slightly to the side, as if it were watching the door. I didn't even hesitate. I grabbed it and threw it into a box, taping it shut and stuffing it into the back of my closet, out of sight, out of mind. Or so I thought. That night I locked my bedroom door. I forced myself to sleep, my exhaustion too heavy to fight, but at exactly 3:12 a.m. a noise woke me, scratching, from inside the closet. My body froze. The sound was faint but deliberate, a slow, dragging scrape against the wood. My breath came in shallow gasps as I pulled the blanket up to my chin, every muscle in my body tense. The scratching stopped, the silence stretched, and then the closet door creaked open. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. The door swung wider, the darkness inside swallowing what little light filled the room, and then I saw it. The box. It was open, empty. I couldn't scream, couldn't force sound past my throat. My eyes darted around the room, searching the shadows, the corners, the bed, and then a whisper right beside my ear. "You found me." I don't remember much after that, just the feeling of pure, paralyzing terror. When I woke up, the sun was filtering through the blinds, my entire body drenched in sweat. My closet door was shut, the box was gone. I searched the entire house. The doll was nowhere. I moved out a month later. Sometimes even now I wake up in the middle of the night and feel watched, and every once in a while I find something small. A single tiny footprint in the dust, a faint scratching noise inside my walls. And last week, in my new apartment, I found something on my pillow, a note written in tiny childlike handwriting. "You can't get rid of me." Yard sales are supposed to be harmless, old things, forgotten things, things people no longer want. But sometimes the things left behind aren't meant to be found. Some objects hold memories, some hold something else. And once you bring them home, they may never leave. If these stories made you think twice about secondhand treasures, share and subscribe for more terrifying true horror stories. And don't forget to hit the bell icon, because the scariest things aren't always hiding in the dark. Sometimes they're waiting for you to take